It's a beautiful day in Toronto. The sun came up this morning. It's been beaming all day. It's great to be on with you guys. Great to see you guys.
Hey, that's what I said to people today, Hazy, because I got the old, what the hell's going on? What's this? What's that? I'm like, the sun is shining, and how about this perspective? And Hazy and Noodles, I bet you thought you weren't going to hear this. What about look on the bright side? The series is tied. Just chew on this for a second. The series is tied 2-2, and nobody's even playing really good. They're 2-2 against the two-time Cup champions, and I don't think anybody, including Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, and the other guy, we're going to get into them later, but nobody's really gotten to their game, and it's 2-2. So if they can get their heads out of their rear ends and put it together, maybe it's not so bad.
Yeah, look at you with the glass half full perspective.
But think about it. They're 2-2, and nobody's even really dialed in. Like, they haven't put their best foot forward and played their best hockey, and yet it's 2-2, and they got 2 games at home. Can't they lie in bed tonight and think, man, I'm kind of putting my eggs in Austin Matthews' basket, where it's like, this guy's got to take control of the series, because I don't know who the hell else can up front. But if him and Mitchie get dialed in, why not? That's what's got to happen.
They have to. There's no option.
I agree,
not
but
up for debate.
I think they played unbelievable in game one, including Matthews and Marner and that. So, like, I get what you're saying. Maybe the last couple
spotty since then, Noodles.
Yeah, you're right. But I mean, I think they've played 2 good games and 2 not good games. Like the good games that they've won, they've done exactly what they've needed to do. Yeah, Matthews and Marner did. But that's I think the way you got to look at it is it's very inconsistent. 1 good, 1 bad, 1 good, 1 bad. Now you got to figure out you got to win 2 or 3. And, last night, unfortunately, it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Now, I thought about this. I don't know how you guys would feel, but if last night's game was on Friday and Friday's game was on Sunday, well, we have a different thought process coming in today.
I think you're onto something there, Noodles. I absolutely believe that would be the case.
Because we would be chewing on it Saturday going, man, they got to respond. And then you would look at the response. Vice versa. I think Tampa Bay overdrive version is saying, didn't like our Friday's game, liked our Sunday response. Now let's see. So I agree with you. You go back to, hey, it's best 2 or 3. You got potentially 2 on home ice. You got to figure out how to get going in certain areas. But it's clear how they've won. If you look at the way the chances have been generated, I think Mike Kelly had a little breakdown analytically. You got to get to the inside. The teams that have won have found middle ice. The teams that haven't done the job. And there's lots to break down today. And I'll let you guys lead the charge on that. But I think you do have lots of optimism, but you get to live with the last game, and last game stunk.
They were horrendous last night.
They were
absolutely awful. And there were a number of things. Like, you lose games, obviously. Of course you're going to lose games. But I thought they were lifeless last night. And
I agree.
I hated their lack of pushback. There were moments last night that really were borderline repulsive watching the game. And we'll get into that momentarily. But you mentioned Mike Kelly. And this is, if you can step back and be objective, which I admit I am not, you do look at it and you say there have been 4 very different games.
Yep.
Like games 1 and 3, Toronto clearly owned those games. They won 5-0 in game 1. And in game 3, they had a 3-0 lead. And then you flip the script, where in game 2 it was Tampa's version of what the Leafs did in game 3. And in game 4 it was Tampa's version of what the Leafs did in game 1. And like you mentioned, our buddy Mike Kelly posting this, in the 2 wins the Leafs have won in this series, they've had 22 inner slot shots. Those are like prime time opportunities, 22. And the 2 losses, they've had 5. Tampa in the 2 wins, they've had 18 slot shots, inner slot shots. In the 2 losses, they've had 7. So clearly it is about aggression. It's about showing up on time. I mean, you don't need to know anything more in terms of depth of stats and analytics to know the importance, if you've been watching hockey your whole life, of scoring the first goal, right? Like, if you score the first goal, the stats are so heavily in your favor, and it just sets the pace. for the rest of the night. And that's what's happened throughout the 4 games. Whoever scores first, generally they score second and then third, and then they run away with the game. So you're right, Noodles, if you flipped it to that debacle last night on Friday and the way they played in Game 3 last night, it is a different mood. It is a different attitude. That's what Sheldon Keefe is portraying. That's what he is saying to his group. He's got to believe in his group. John Cooper's got to believe in his group. The thing is, what I say all the time about this team is they are victims of their own history, right? So, of course, people are looking at Tampa from afar and saying, well, they'll figure it out. They'll do it, because that's all they do for 2 years is they do it. The Leafs haven't won a playoff series in 18 years. So they don't have anyone backing them up outside of Maple Leaf fans believing they'll find a way to switch this. And yet they have to. They're healthy. They have home ice. And they've been talking about this for years, right? Like, this isn't just a week in the making. It's not even a season in the making. You can go back years in terms of the Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares era. It's been years where they've been saying, I'm telling you we're different. I'm telling you we'll figure it out. They have 3 games in the next, 4 nights, 5 nights to figure it out, right?
Yep.
And they got to prove it. And if they don't, then guess what? Your reputation doesn't change. If anything, people are going to dump on you even more because you got an opportunity here. Tampa's a great team. They're a great team. They're going to show up and play. But you're a very good team, too. You had a great season. You got good depth, good talent. You're healthy, home ice. No excuses. Go out there and get the job done. Go win 2 games.
I should put a caveat on that. Like, if the games were switched, doesn't mean that Saturday people aren't pissed and doing what we're doing exactly right now. We need to talk it out. We need to discuss, because last night is the freshest in our mind.
And also what the board that Joe from the Bridge just put up is meaningful, right? Because they're up 2-1. They got a chance to show up. And what I thought was most disappointing last night was, again, the lip service for 12 months about how they have been trying to convince themselves, the Maple Leafs, and convince the world. They're frothing at the mouth to prove they're different. Frothing at the mouth to prove no one's more hungry. They will never take their foot off the gas. And they're up 2-1, and they looked as if they were ecstatic they won Game 3, and they were fine with coming home split. Right? They didn't even show up to play.
Dude, that's what I said in SportsCenter last night, Hayes. It counts as 1 loss, okay? 7-1 or whatever the hell it was, and 2-1, it's the same in a playoff scoring record. It's like you're losing the game. But what a missed opportunity for a bunch of guys that, as you mentioned, Brian, for years have been saying, it's different, it's going to be different, we're going to learn, blah, blah, blah. That's what it was. It was a horribly missed opportunity where it was like the Tampa Bay coach, John Cooper, dared his team to be terrible. He's like, if we don't find energy and find something tonight, he said, we're done. And Victor Hedman was asked about it before the game. He started laughing. Horribly missed opportunity because you really could have got their attention. And they've never been in a bind like that in the last 2 years, being down 3-1. Where that was an opportunity where these guys could have said, we're not only going to kind of, steal that game in Game 3. Now we're really going to get your attention. We're going to put you in a bind and possibly go back to Toronto and end your season.
Right.
And they couldn't do it. They came out flat and they were terrible. And you talk about frothing at the mouth. There were some efforts last night where it just kind of is confusing, but we shouldn't be shocked because the play with Nylander, I don't know what that was, and I don't know who was commentating on TNT that said if I was the coach.
It was Eddie.
It was Eddie Olczyk said I would have just taken the guy off the ice. And then he goes out and scores 2 goals. So the people with calculators were all horned up and like, oh, he's awesome. It was so far away. I remember Julian Breezeball last year. He started crying, man, like at a presser. He was like talking about the sacrifices and the way that guys played to win a Stanley Cup. And he was in tears, and he's like, that's how you win a cup. And you two guys talked about every hit is like some kind of investment. I was embarrassed for him last night with that nonsense out there. How the hell do you go out and play like that? And then he scores 2 goals. But at the end of the day, it's like somebody told me today, why are you surprised? That's what he is. And he could go out and be the first star tomorrow night and score 3 goals, and they could win because that's what he is. It's just game by game. You never know. It's a box of chocolates, man.
Well, yes, the Forrest Gump saying. I understand that. But I think what Kyle Dubas has flat out said, he said it many times, Willie is a frustrating guy. When he's great, he's great. When it's off, like there's people that defend Willie to the death, and there's people that don't like Willie, and whatever he does in a negative way, they circle and say, see where you go. Somewhere in the middle has to be a Willie that competes and a Willie that dominates when he can. And that's the problem. Is last night the detractors and even people that were just like, holy smokes, this is the playoffs, and that's what you're getting. I think that's what's most disappointing. Is it comes back to what you were saying, Brian, is this is the playoffs. Like you should be frothing at the mouth for every play. And
him and his centerman, Jamie, if they were black ace call-ups and they played the first two periods like they did, they wouldn't be playing the next game, and they probably wouldn't get on the ice for the third period. That's what they were doing out there. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
But you know what the thing is? I'm going to say this. You may not like it. You need them to win. You need them.
No kidding.
You need them to win. Top players are going to play against each other. We saw Braden Point. Braden Point didn't find the back of the net. I thought he was one of the best players on the ice last night. I thought he was unbelievable. But you know what? Like eventually he's going to. Stamkos broke through. Hedman, Vasilevsky, they're top players. Kucherov, they're doing it on the games that they win. You just said Matthews and Marner. Well, if the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to win this series, you're going to need 91 and 88 to
Noodles,
be
I totally
big
get it, bud.
contributors.
And I would love to do Sports Center tomorrow night with little Jimmy Duthie. And I would love to lead saying, they won this game because John Tavares and William Nylander were the two best players on the ice. But I'm telling you, I'm skeptical I'm going to say that. I'm really skeptical I'm going to say that.
Yeah, I'm skeptical more so for Tavares doing it because I think what has happened here with John Tavares is he can still be a very effective player. He has to be. I think we have to be reasonable regardless of how people want to react to this because the contract comes up, the captaincy comes up, which is understandable.
Right.
He is not a dominant force. Like that's not going to happen where, we've been saying this for a long time. John is not going to step over the boards and take over games. What he has to do is be effective below the dots in the offensive zone, be effective on the power play, win faceoffs, and be very defensively sound. That's a win for John Tavares. Okay? That's, if you're being reasonable, that's what you need to get.
Okay, well, those
that's
three things you just mentioned, Brian, you better do them, and you better be damn good at it.
He has to, and it hasn't been good enough. William Nylander is an enigma. He always has been. I have more faith in him to show up out of nowhere and be dominant, and I have more faith and more belief that he can actually be a more dominating presence because of his ability to skate, his ability to, take shots on the fly. He can get behind defenses at times. He's. Right. I think there is more there in terms of a guy who can be a game breaker. I don't see. That's not to say Tavares won't chip in offensively. You need that. You need a goal here or there. You need a nice play here or there, which he made. The game was over. But, a stop up at the blue line. He hits Willie. It's in the net. Okay. Get that every once in a while. But I think you got to be reasonable with what you can even expect out of Tavares. I think Willie can give way more, and I think it's likely it'll show up at some point. I don't know if he'll do it for 3 straight games, but I think it'll happen at some point here. But I think we're burying the lead here. For me, Austin Matthews has got to snap out of it. I thought, based on his standards, he was not good enough in Tampa. Like, if you are going to win the Hart this year, at a minimum, you're top 2 or 3. I remember talking about McDavid last year in that series against Winnipeg. And I said, you can't compare McDavid's night, even if it's an off night, to the average player on the ice. Because he's way better than that guy, even on an off night.
Right.
It's based on the standards he has set. It's relative to McDavid's standards. Same conversation's happening in Edmonton right now, but just to point out, based on what happened last night. But Austin Matthews has been an absolute horse this year. Every time he's been on the ice, a horse. Probably going to win the Hart. I thought those 2 games in Tampa were one of the two of the flattest games he's played all year. And Game 3 didn't matter. Game 3 didn't matter because Campbell showed up for them and their depth guys showed up and they won. And that's the way it works in the playoffs. You need those type of wins. And when you win in the playoffs, everything gets cleared and no one cares anymore. But last night, I thought Point, Cirelli, and Killorn buried him 5-on-5. And if this is turning into the Philip Deneau show 2.0 again, it's unacceptable. It cannot happen. I didn't buy that last year that Danault buried him. You're way better than Danault. I know Danault is a great defensive player. Be better. You cannot carry that over. I'm looking square at Matthews. Tavares, yes. Nylander, yes. You're the best player on this team. You're the rock star of this team. You've got to have life. You got to be great. You have to be. This is it. This is where you transition from being a regular season legend to a playoff legend. These are your moments. If you want to change your rep, because he's got it too, right? He didn't take a lot of heat last year. He didn't do anything in games 5, 6, and 7. He's the best player on the team. He's got to do it. McDavid and
that's
Edmonton,
why there was
gotta
optimism
do it.
after Game 3, Hazy, because like you said, the depth guys got it done, some solid goaltending, and everybody was so optimistic because they were like, Austin Matthews could take control of Game 4, and they could be up going home to try to end the series.
Right.
Yep.
Didn't happen. It never materialized. He had one shot on goal last night. Like, this is the best pure goal scorer, dominating force in the league.
Yeah.
And I didn't think he played well last night. I didn't. I thought he blended into the game. And, you know, he had a great start to the series. He's got points. He had a power play assist last night and a 5-1 goal that was ultimately meaningless.
Well,
but
you're right.
I'm talking more about where we're going from here, okay? I didn't like his game in Tampa, okay? Marner, I think, is more effective because he kills penalties. That's a big part of it, too. I think Marner's been good, and I think he can elevate more, and I expect more, and I think he'll bring it. But to me, you know, it goes without saying Campbell's got to be great for 2 of the next 3 games. Like, obviously, right? Vasilevsky, the same thing. But it starts with 34. Like, I think he's got to play 22, 23 minutes, and he's got to be a horse. He has to be. Yeah. He's a great player in his prime. This is your time. This is your moment.